Hi, my name is Danielle Badra, and I am the outgoing Fairfax County Poet Laureate. I am also the author of the book of poetry, Like We Still Speak, from the University of Arkansas Press. It is just as important now as it has ever been to show up and support LGBTQIA plus writers. The current political climate in the US teeters on the perilous edge of fascism in the name of Christian fundamentalism. And within that framework, there are countless intentions to strip away the rights of queer and trans folks, to reverse whatever minimal progress has happened in recent history. In 2001, when I was in 10th grade, in my civics classroom, a student raised his hand and said, quote, "I believe homosexuals should receive the death penalty." The teacher did not tell him that was inappropriate. The students didn't correct him either. Everyone just sat there, non-responsive to this homophobic call for violence. I sat there and tried to disappear, hoping no one knew my mother was a lesbian, hoping no one knew that I was queer too. I do believe progress has been made for LGBTQIA plus rights since I was in high school, and a lot of that is due in part to representation in literature and in popular culture. Without representation of the lived experience of the full spectrum of queer identities, ignorance is allowed to prosper. And it is that ignorance that fuels the political climate we find ourselves in today. I'm so very thankful and grateful to the authors joining us today for resolving to share their LGBTQIA plus stories. We are joined by Jennifer Espinoza with I Don't Want to Be Understood, Tanya Olson with Born Backwards, Jocelyn Heath with In the Cosmic Fugue, and Beatty with Dragstripping. These four poets exhibit courage in a time of intense censorship toward any woke literature, any literature that hints at liberation, queer liberation, Black liberation, Indigenous liberation. I'm thankful to them for sharing their voices today. Before we begin, I must call attention to another liberation movement, the movement for Palestinian liberation. All fights for liberation are intertwined and cannot exist without the other. I am a queer Arab American, and I know intimately that the fight for queer liberation is tied to the fight for Palestinian liberation. Queer, as in Free Palestine, is a phrase you've probably heard recently. It's a call to recognize the connection between these two fights for liberation. End the genocide, ceasefire now, ceasefire forever, Free Palestine. And now we turn to the readers.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Espinoza, and I'm here today to read a poem from my book, I Don't Want to Be Understood, a collection of poems that was just released or going to be released through Alice James Books in August. So this poem is the first poem in the book, and it sort of bookends the narrative within the poetry collection, which is sort of a memoir about childhood, adulthood, and the ways that we as adults kind of narrativize and try to make sense of things that have happened to us in the past. And so the poetry book opens with a scene of the speaker at an airport getting ready to go see her family, who she hasn't seen since she came out as transgender. And she's going to see her family, even though she knows most of them are not supportive of her. So the scene opens with her in the airport, and it's based on a real thing that happened to me, but obviously it becomes very fictionalized partway through the poem. But it's inspired by the all too familiar process of being stopped by the TSA as a trans person and kind of like groped and patted down and violated in that way just because of your visible gender nonconformity or whatever it might be. So that's enough about the poem. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. This is called Airport Ritual. The following is a true story. An anomaly is spotted. A woman is taken aside. I am going to have to touch you now, an agent says. I am going to use the front of my hands on most of you and the back of my hands on your private parts. Is there anything you need to let me know before I proceed? I'm trans, the woman leans in to whisper, unsure if she means this as a warning or an apology. That's okay, the agent says as she grabs the woman's shoes. Would you like to take this elsewhere? Before the woman can answer, the thing in her pants that set the sensors off suddenly expands, tearing through her clothes and revealing an amorphous blob of cosmic energy. It is purplish and void-colored at the same time. There is an impossible shimmer to it. It grows outward, enveloping the agent, the body scanning machine, and the white dads in red baseball hats gawking at her predicament. Then the whole terminal. Then the entire airport. The military plans a strike in response. Some trans guy who fought for the right to kill people on behalf of an empire that hates him is chosen to operate the drone. Better optics, someone thought. When hit, the woman grows hundreds of times her size. The city of Irvine is pretty much toast. Fox News is floating the idea of forcing trans people into detention facilities until we're sure they don't all pose the threat of having expanding cosmic blobs for genitalia. It's polling well. Meanwhile, the woman at the center of the plasma, or whatever the fuck it is, just wants someone to say one thing to her that doesn't feel like kite string wrapped around an open wound in a warm, strong wind. But it doesn't happen. So she sings something to herself, a song she heard in a grocery store once. Michelle Branch, frozen food aisle, instant tears. She remembers her life, floats up into a cloud, gets carried away. No one can track her. She is dispersed, rained down upon the dirt and patchy grass where her old house used to be. Flowers bloom. People pluck them and give them to people they love. Everything is normal. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Jennifer Espinoza, and that poem is from my forthcoming collection, I Don't Want to Be Understood, from Alice James Books. Thank you all so much.
Hi, my name is Tanya Olson, and I'm going to read today from my book, Born Backwards. And when I started writing this book, one of the questions I was thinking about is if dinosaur poets had known that the asteroid was coming, what poems would they have thought was important to write down? So I was thinking a lot about questions of extinction and preservation when I was writing this book. And I wanted to make sure that these weren't poems of nostalgia, that there was some kind of looking back to a better time. And I didn't want them to be poems of a progress narrative, that things were bad and always progressively getting better, because neither one of those stories seemed correct to me in and of themselves. So I thought a lot about, when I was writing this book, about my mother, who always had a really huge garden and was a big canner, and always canned a lot of what we grew. So to preserve things so that they wouldn't be lost, since we couldn't eat all the tomatoes or the zucchini or the cucumbers at once, but also to keep things for future need when it wasn't summer, and maybe things were a little less green or a little harder, we would still have these things. So, in this book, one of the things that I wanted to preserve were stories of queer life in the 80s and the 90s, especially stories of butch life, and especially stories from the South. So today I'm going to read one of those poems of extinction and preservation, and that poem is called Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair is an old philosophical term which refers to the flawed world in which we live and its preference for idle pleasures. In Pilgrim's Progress, Bunyan makes it an actual place built by demons to distract the faithful with fools, apes, knaves, and rogues, and that of every kind. Thackeray borrowed the term to title his novel of corruption and greed, a novel that points out the cost inherent in trying to become a person you are not. Vanity Fair, next, a magazine centered on culture and fashion, published in the 1900s, a magazine I never knew existed until Katie Lang appeared on its cover, lathered up and sprawled across a barber chair, getting a close shave from Cindy Crawford. Katie Lang, so suave, so smooth in her pinstripe suit and pompadour. Katie Lang, who loved Patsy Cline so much, she believed herself a kind of reincarnation and named her first band the Reclines. Katie Lang, who moved to Nashville and was roundly ignored by almost everyone in town except Loretta Lynn and Minnie Pearl, despite being a top-selling country artist for 2 years running, despite the richness of tone rising from those flawless pipes. Butch Dyke was so unimaginable in 1980s Nashville, Lang sold more than 1 million albums, but mostly remained unknown. So she announced she was a vegan and a lesbian and took out to California, a place with its own style of country music, where she made a different kind of album. In LA, she met Madonna, who promptly announced Elvis is alive and she is beautiful. Someone in her hometown wrote, "Eat beef, Dyke," on the town sign, but by summer 92, we were all constant craving has always been, which landed Lang on the cover of Vanity Fair, straddled by Crawford, a straight edge gently pressed to her neck. Vanity Fair was originally published for 20 years before the Great Depression killed it off. The magazine returned from the dead in the 80s and is still around today. Unextinction is the act of bringing a species back when previously it was gone. These days, Lang accepts Lifetime Achievement Awards and only issues remixes of earlier albums. "The muse is eluding me," she recently said. "I am at peace with the fact I may be done." Lang claims singing Every Breath You Take with Shaka Khan is her favorite performance ever, and she has a point. The two sound amazing together, but Lang also admits talking about her own career is akin to asking an apple how it thinks it might taste, and no apple, Lang insists, knows how it tastes. Re-extinction is the act of reviving a lost species just to be able to kill it off again. Our world is but an island stocked with deceitful fares. Lord Old Man, Lord Carnal Delight huddle together and giggle and plot and scheme. It is easy enough to believe yourself different, think you are but a pilgrim merely wandering through. But makers know to dive in the pit if they want to disturb the trade. Live bold in the cage, razor firm to your throat, at the heart of our Vanity Fair. Thank you. I'm Tanya Olson.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Heath, poet and essayist from Norfolk State University, and I'm here to read a poem from my first collection, In the Cosmic Fugue. Just to let everybody know a little bit about what this is about, I call it my affectionately my little book of gay space poems. I love space and science, and I use that universe as a metaphor in many ways for self-discovery and coming out. However, the poem I'm going to read this morning actually does not involve space. However, it's an interesting example for those of you who may be dabbling in writing, or even a good reminder for those of us into our careers, is that sometimes we can misjudge our own work. I wrote this poem kind of to fill a narrative gap in the book. I didn't expect it to be more than sort of serving a function, but it's one of the poems that my readers have singled out for praise the most. So yeah, this is Love Poem in a TGI Fridays. We're back under the pierced glass lamps where I leaned on her arm and looked at her driver's license, not for the picture she showed off to our youth group kids, but to check the year of her birth. Only 4 years older. And it scared and excited me because suddenly she was real, not some imagined love, and this could, in fact, be. Even now, my feet drum the booth, ready to run from what's too much, from gentle arms that clutch tight enough to smother everything I am. On her couch, we talked until her hand dared to fix my earring, smooth my hair, and then kiss followed. I don't know how to do this. Safe in the din of clinking pints, I watch her watch the game at the bar TV, absorbed as I think I could be, as I think I might let myself be, in us. The pitcher winds up, releases the ball he held close, trusting in the path he set it on. I never did learn how to throw. Thank you for listening. This is again from my book, In the Cosmic Fugue, and I'm Jocelyn Heath. Happy Pride.
Okay, hi. My name is Jan Beatty, and I'm talking about my book, Dragstripping. It's the cover. It's coming out September 2024, so that's kind of like right now. And Dragstripping is about what it says. I mean, there's a lot in it about drag, as in different kinds of drag. Drag as in dressing in drag. There's a lot of gender movement in the book. There's a lot about being dragged down by life and trauma and loss, which I know everyone has experienced. And there's also there's drag strips in the book, as in an actual drag strip with cars. I'm really into muscle cars. And then there's a lot about stripping, as in actual stripping in a strip club, stripping as in what is stripped away from us during a life, what we might want to strip away from ourselves or from others. So it moves around a lot, and so that's the idea of the cover. On the cover, you'll see there are some book titles: Dragstripping, Sanctified, Junkie, Scarline. There's some stuff about addiction in there. And so I thought the poem that I would read today is it's called Drag, and it includes a line from Neil Young. It starts with reference to an orphanage. I was born in an orphanage in the Hill District of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of Pittsburghs, and I lived in the orphanage for at least a year, as far as I know. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. Drag. They say I have attachment disorder from years in the orphanage. I say I'm attached to dirt, to the grit of stones, pulverized metal from the slag heap. I learned touch from air. I fashioned love from strangers. Your families make no sense to me. My mother's the four-barrel of a 409. My heart's drag stripped from the shredded tires of predators. Go ahead. Think of me. Throw the red flag down. I'm one you'd never figured. Dead engines start on a quarter-mile strip. My low jack is the split, the pull away. You back there, me running the distance.